All right, so we are recording. Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Porter. I'm the class of 2006 at Wells, and I work in the Alumni and Alumni Engagement Office at Wells in Pettibone. And I want to thank our volunteers today for showing up. We've got a great panel of people to do a career panel. I'm going to start us off with a Hugo land acknowledgement. This was approved by the faculty May 9th, 2018. Wells College recognizes our collective responsibility to acknowledge our colonial history. This land is the traditional land of the Cayuga Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Wells College commits itself to ensuring the traditions and culture of Indigenous peoples are embraced and reflected upon in order to engage in solidarity with the Cayuga Nation. So, and hopefully we'll get some people joining us, but I'll keep an eye on the waiting room there. We'll just dive right in, and let's start off with an introduction. How about your name and class, year, and your current position to start us off? Do you guys want me to call on you, or do you want me to just, do you want to jump right in?
Rachel, I'll go first.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
Sure. So I was a non-traditional student at Wells. I went back to get my bachelor's degree in government, minor in secondary education. Absolutely loved every second of it. Currently, I am the accounts payable person at SUNY Morrisville. So I found myself in a government agency, not quite where I expected to be, but love every minute of it. My coworkers are great. And for the last 8 years, I have been employed by the state of New York. So looking forward to retirement. Oh, and my son is a senior at Wells. So I am super proud of that.
All right, let's go, Val.
Great. I'm Val. I use she and they pronouns. I'm from the Wells class of 2016. So a recent alum, and I'm currently the associate director at the University of Washington Q Center, which is the LGBTQ resource center on campus. We primarily serve the main flagship campus of Seattle, but also the tri-campuses of UW, Tacoma, and Bothell as well. Yeah, and that's me. I studied at Wells cultural anthropology and sociology. It's kind of a combined major for those of you that are Wells students. And then my minors were in business and Spanish. So kind of all over the place, did a lot of stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
Thank you. And let's go, Duncan Lawrence.
Everyone, I'm Duncan Lawrence, he, him, class of 2021, psychology major, economics minor, and I am the founder of Bend, which is a small digital marketing studio. I live outside of Boston.
Thank you. Abigail?
Awesome. I am Abigail Yanko. You'll hear people talk about me as Abby. I was the class of 2011. She, her pronouns, and I studied anthropology and sociology like Val. And so it's a combined major, but my focus was in sociology. And then my minors were in communications and book arts. So similar vein, tried a bunch of stuff. And my current role, I just started a new role about 2 weeks ago. I'm the senior manager of operational planning and engagement at Dell Technologies for one of our business units.
Awesome. And Zach?
Hi, y'all. I'm Zachary Chipsis. Zach, use he, him pronouns. I studied psychology while at Wells. So I was a psychology major, and I had a double minor in secondary education and theater. And I currently work as the manager of student life and housing at the Boston Architectural College, which is a small design school located in Back Bay, Boston. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Marette?
Hi, I'm Marette Seymour, class of 1998. I use she, her pronouns. I was a history and secondary ed major at Wells, but I am a program supervisor at the Salvation Army for outreach case management in our community and I'll get into more what we do. but I've been in social work for about 20 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm always so blown away at how many of you have double majors and minors. When people rattle off their list, I'm like, holy moly, how did they do it all? Great. So we've got a really great broad range of careers here and majors and minors. Let's just dive right into how Wells prepared you for your career and how you got into that line of work. Like, did you think you were going to do this job when you started college? How did you figure that out?
I can just kick off with that one. No, I didn't see myself at a technology company to save my life. No way. Sociology was my passion, and I wanted to go be a professor, and I wanted to go get my MA, which I did, but I did it while working at Dell. And so it was kind of a, which way am I going to go? Which path am I going to take? And ultimately, I felt really good at where I was. And I knew nothing about the technology space, and I argue I still don't. But what I do understand is people, and I understand organizational change. And so those things are what keeps me at Dell, not necessarily the technology piece. So definitely did not plan on being here, but I've loved it ever since I've come in.
I'm going to jump in next. I also did, I did not want to be a teacher, and my dad was the one who really pushed me to history and secondary ed. I had an internship at Rape Crisis in Ithaca my junior or senior year with one of my friends, and I knew that's really what I wanted to do. So when I came home, I actually dropped out of my student teaching senior year and said, like, I don't want to do this. And then I started with like a small agency here in Syracuse, but then worked into a job where I worked with the district attorney's office and worked with the police and worked with a local nonprofit. And I got more into the legal piece of it. And that's where I really discovered that's exactly what I wanted to do. It led me to where I am now, supervising case managers who do gang outreach and some homeless outreach. And so I have a little bit of the legal piece of it, and I have a little piece of the mental health part of social work as well.
Yeah, if I could jump in after that, I think I came into Wells wanting to go into the education program as well, thinking I was going to come out a teacher and, you know, become certified and do all of that stuff. And as I kind of got into it, I realized that teaching at a secondary school just wasn't for me. And it wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. And at Wells, I was a very involved student. I was involved in everything. And I asked myself the question of like, okay, how can I continue this type of involvement with like orienting students to a new college, or, you know, being in that college environment, and higher education just kind of seemed like the natural path. Since I was already studying education, I wanted to work in education. And I'm really grateful to the mentors and the people at Wells who helped really kind of steer and guide me in that direction. And, you know, I'm thankful for those people saying, you know, you can do this, and this is an option that you have. Because I don't think people think working at a college is an option when they go into college. It's really when you're at college that you realize, oh, I could actually work here and be successful and help still change students' lives, and be impactful to them in that way. So that's kind of how I wanted to be a high school teacher, but then I, you know, fell into higher education, and I'm very appreciative of that, and definitely love what I do.
I'll hop in. Graduating in 2011 was kind of the end of the recession, and kind of coming out, basically grasping for whatever job seemed to be a potential thing to pay me money so I could not live at home was my goal. And I never want to get in marketing. I have family who was in it and always said I would never do that. But it turns out that was what was available, and I was pretty good at it. And in terms of kind of what Wells prepared me for, I mean, I love a liberal arts education, and I think that was a huge thing for me about what prepared me, because at Wells, small school, you get to have relationships with your professors and your peers, and you learn what they count on you for and what you don't need to do so much of. And I think a big thing for me working professional services and consulting is knowing those relationships, and particularly when I have to put in a shit ton of work, and a little bit of work to get the job done. And I think most people I knew at Wells found out with professors when you could slack a little bit and still get by and learn enough and do well. And I think in professional services, that's huge, because every email seems to have the same urgency, but it doesn't require the same amount of effort to get the result that's needed. I feel a little lazy saying that, but it's where it came about.
I think you're spot on though, Duncan, about two things. One, about knowing how to build your own priorities, right? And Wells really does that, right? And that makes you a better person in any career to say, I know how to prioritize effectively. There's definitely that. And then there's this other piece of, yeah, Wells is about all the other stuff, right? The people, the relationships you build, the chances you get to take, the things you get to try and fail at doing, like, and figuring it out. I think you're spot on.
As a non-traditional student, I have to say that's what Wells gave me. Was at the time I was going through a separation, I went back to school. I had 2 kids. How am I going to support these kids? Upon graduation, I fell into state service at a state park of all places, right next to my house. It turned into a year-round job. I've been with the state 8.5 years now. I can't see myself working in the private sector again. I've done other, retail jobs and stuff like that as extra money, but it sounds crazy because I make peanuts. The benefits are great, but Wells gave me the ability to adapt and change to the environment that you're in. And I walked into the job I'm in now 5 months before COVID, came back after having a minor procedure and said, go home, do your job from home. So here I am new to this job. And now I'm doing it from home with no help other than a computer. And okay, let me learn how to do this job. And I spent 18 months at home and just now got back into the office this summer and am finding it such a relief to be back among my working family that the distractions at home, I'm sure everybody has experienced, but just being able to adapt, Wells gave me that, because as a non-traditional student, I was studying at basketball games for my kids. I was taking my kids everywhere. I had to adapt, and Wells gave me that ability, and the friendships, and yeah, like you said, you can't get those at a bigger school. I feel like I went to a SUNY school. I am not friends with any of those people. My Wells people are my people.
I think those themes are so common, Betty. Like, we've got a pretty big generational gap here with when we all were at Wells, and we hear that all the time, and even with our classes from decades ago. A lot of people who transferred out of Wells for one reason or another are still connected with Wells, and maybe not with where they ended up going to school. So I think that's really says something special about this place. Let's talk about what are the things that are the most satisfying about your jobs, maybe things that you don't like about your job, and challenges that you've had to face.
I'm going to jump in quick because I know I have like 11 minutes till this conference is going to start on my computer. Like it's counting down as we're talking. I love being a social worker. I love helping people. I love working with kids. The biggest challenge is the bureaucracy, is the adults in the contracts with the state, and that I have my contracts in my job I have federal contracts, I have state contracts, I have local contracts. And if you lined up my case managers, they all do the same job. But if you look at what's required of each of those programs, like I have to deal with the red tape piece of it, which I hate. I've always loved the frontline work. And I'm lucky that I work in a building where I can still do some of that work, because then I can get a little bit of like what I love. But I think when you guys were talking about like what Wells gave you, like I never in my wildest dreams thought this would be my job. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would get to do what I love every single day, work with people who are some of the best in town. make some of the connections that I made. I mean, honestly, like one of the funniest connections that we've made in this program is that we have a great connection with the SU basketball team. And like Jim Boeheim knows my name. And like, I think that's the coolest thing in the world. And like, I know his kids and his wife and those guys come and volunteer for us. And like seeing some of that is so endearing of like how people want to give back to some of the kids we work with. We work with really tough kids. My kids are the ones who, and I call them my kids because they're all my kids. You know, when you read Syracuse.com and you see a teen shooting, it's usually a young person we know. And the young person is usually a shooter and the young person is usually the deceased. And that has been a very difficult piece of this job as well, is to how to turn off some of those emotions sometimes. So you have to find this, when you were talking about balance, Betty, like that balance of like, when do I turn it off and watch the basketball game? And when do I keep doing my job? And I do think that Wells taught us that. And, you know, I too have a fantastic group of friends that I came out of Wells with that I still travel with to this day. I was just before this meeting looking at bridesmaids dresses because I'm in a Wells wedding in March. You know, having that support system is so important, and keeping that support system is really important too.
Can you repeat the question? I was totally enthralled and lost the question.
I was just asking about, you know, what do you like best about your job? Like, what's most satisfying? Is there anything that's not really appealing or that you struggle with? Any biggest challenges you've had? And I know we're recording this, but, you know, I think it's great. You can say like, oh, this is something I struggled with or didn't think I would, you know, get into.
Yeah, I've run my company for about 5 or 6 years now, and I really do love running it. It's also incredibly stressful, and kind of figuring out when do I want to work extra hours, because since it's my own company, if I'm putting in more time, making more money, billing clients more, versus when do I want to go have lunch with my family upstairs, especially working from home. So it's been good. It's been harder as my family's evolved too. Like when I was like single and then married and then with a dog, changed everything. I didn't think it would. It changed everything about what I could do on my own. I had to not work at an office and start working kind of more remotely. But I love the flexibility of it. I wouldn't have the ability just to travel out west to Portland to see family kind of on a whim for the middle of a couple of weeks versus like just kind of working the hours that I'm expected to. But it is really hard to turn it off, and also to decide kind of, or to acknowledge the fact that a lot of my financial independence is at the whim of my clients. And so if I were to have a truly terrible year and them all to go away, like early COVID, I remember being very frightened because I was just dependent on the contracts that I had. And if they all went away, that was it. So I love the flexibility, hate the kind of being stuck a little bit. Yeah, golden handcuffs, I guess, is the overused phrase for that. Yeah.
I think something that I struggled with is kind of what Marat was talking about earlier about being able to do the job that she loves. Because I feel like I came to Dell. It was originally an EMC. It was a different company, very local to New England. And I originally came in for the same type of, well, shoot, I just need a job, right? I just need something to pay these student loans because they're going to start, and I'm very aware of that timetable that's coming. And one of the challenges was, one, being adaptable, but then two, adjusting to a culture that wasn't Wells. And that was a very stark contrast. I was like, oh, people don't have the same mutual respect and kindness out in the real world like they do at Wells, right? And they aren't as aware of some of these socio-political conversations that we have very openly at Wells. And I was like, oh, I have to temper that and kind of balance. I think the world is catching up, right? So Dell and major corporations are starting to flip that turn, but not when I started in 2011. So kind of adjusting to, okay, who is authentic Abby now, right? Is Wells Abby okay at Dell Abby, or are those two different Abbies? And how do I manage that and have those multiple masks? So it's doable. You have the skills to do it, but it is a bit of a culture shock, and that was really tough. I had to decide if I was a sellout, you know, like, am I selling out and going private and trying to figure out if this is the right place to be, and have to check it against my morals and what I felt was important, especially as a sociology major, right? You can see inequality everywhere. And then now that I'm stepping into a management leadership role, I feel like it's even more, I am in a position that I never thought I would be. And I'm responsible for people's livelihoods. And that's scary. So those are two major ones that are the culture, and then my relationship with socio-political stuff and how I feel about it. That's something I have to grapple with.
Very hardcore of you, Abby.
Oh, it's hard, man.
Yeah, that
I'm a
really
sellout.
resonates with me. Similarly, I feel like, yeah, the culture shift of going from Wells, which is a very small like institution, moving to a higher ed campus and landscape that serves like 50,000 students. Like the University of Washington is a state school, and yeah, has graduate, undergraduate programming, like professional certification programs, and serving a campus at that scale was so different. And like one of the major challenges, and well, one, transitioning just to completely a new like region, environment, culture as a grad student, and then stepping into a management role, now being like, oh, what is my relationship to like now being an arm or a branch of the state, and like being responsible for student employees, supervising these folks. Yeah, I have so many like feelings around it and thinking about it. That was one of the biggest challenges. And also, yeah, like the honor code doesn't exist in the real world in the same ways. You know, you have to find your community and really like cultivate it with that discernment and critical thinking and adaptability that Wells like all gave us. So that was like one of the major challenges, and I'm still trying to figure it out in my role. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a weird like thing to be doing. Like, and sometimes I talk to students often like in advising or as a supervisor, and I just reflect on my undergraduate experience that is vastly different than their undergraduate experience. And then I'm like, am I doing a good job? Because I don't know if we're relating, if like the advice I'm giving you is actually like gonna help support you. Because Wells is such a unique space, but it did like offer so much. And I think, yeah, those critical thinking skills, the discernment skills, I think another challenge and struggle, but also a strength is like the boundary work. Like sometimes I reflect on my undergraduate experience at Wells, and then I'm like, oh, I was doing so much, and maybe that's not what I have to do as a professional adult in the world. I don't need to wear all of the hats and like do all of the things. Yeah, so that's kind of like the balance between the struggles and challenges I faced in my new role in like transitioning out of the Wells community. But also like what I really appreciate about what Wells had to offer, and things that I often like rely upon in my resilience and in navigating like the new situations that arise.
I just wanted to say something quick about that, Val, about the honor code thing. So I have case managers who go out in the community all day long. And so one of my things is they used to have this like ridiculous, like you had to sign in and sign out every time you came in and out of the building. And I was like, are we in like third grade? Like we can't trust the people we work with here. So I finally said to them, like, I will give you, you have all my trust until I can't trust you any longer. And I was like, I'm doing this on your honor. And every single one of them is so good about it. So I think that like that honor code piece that they instilled in us at 18 was such a huge piece to grow as a professional.
I love that you're using it in your career, because I feel like I just do the trust part, but I don't tell them that I'm holding them to it.
Oh yeah.
And then I get burned.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And like trust me, like the case managers coming into my program, Abby, are like 22, 23. So I have like these are entry level positions that people are coming into. So it's not like I have like a mature person who's been in a couple of social work jobs. Like these are young kids who I'm like, you know, I'm trying to teach you, prepare you for the world, because some people aren't going to trust you like I do.
That's awesome.
And so to build that from the beginning and instill that into them to go into other jobs, it's great.
I love that.
Yes, I know Marette will probably get kicked out as she's going to another conference call. So just if she disappears, yeah, the chat's going strong, which won't be on the recording that, you know, we're all like, yes, yes, I feel this. Let's talk a little bit about your time at Wells and maybe anything that really stuck with you in terms of a favorite class, something that really helped prepare you for your career. And if there was something you could have done differently there, what would that look like?
So what I took away from Wells is honestly my best friend, who was a professor of mine. To this day, we are sisters for life. We are Wells sisters, even though she was my professor. And she's younger than me. She won't let me forget that either. But she has been there for me through everything. I walked up to her and I said, "What's a thesis?" I had no idea. I will be brutally honest, I had no clue. And she sat me down and explained it to me. And she's had some health issues. I've been there for her. There's been some tragedies. Same both ways. She's been there for me. I've been there for her. I can't thank Wells enough for that one connection. Not to mention, like I said, I have friends who are in their 30s. My niece and I share this connection because we went there together. We were there for a year together, so that was great. Wells just gave me so much freedom, independence, how to be my own person, care for my kids, the confidence, I think, to go into the workforce. I was a stay-at-home mom. Here, you know, separating from my husband and going back to school was what I needed to do. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. The Susans in the education program were great. I cannot say enough about the Susans. I love them. And I also had Professor Tabrizi and one more Susan, again, in my corner, helping me, prodding me, just encouraging me, no different than a 20-year-old student. And I can't say enough. If I ever needed a recommendation, if I need anything, I know I can reach out to them. I can reach out to any of my Wells friends, and they're going to be the same way. So just having that network, which is why I try to do this, having that network of people, Wells gave me that. I don't have that with my coworkers, but I will tell you, even though I work at SUNY Morrisville, I did buy one of those little Wells die cut things from Robert, and it is on my plexiglass shield because I proudly rep Wells at SUNY Morrisville. So probably makes a few people angry, but hey, it's where I'm from.
Yeah. If I can jump in, I love that you gave a shout out to the Susans, because the Susans were a huge part of my experience as well. And I think coming into school as that traditional student, I wasn't comfortable with my identity as a queer person. I wasn't comfortable really exploring, you know, myself and who I am. So I think those people, not just those professors, but like you said, also your fellow students, your classmates, your best friends for life that are going to help you through so many different things. I think that is what really has propelled me to be the person that I am today, and has kept me grounded, right? It's when you go back to Wells, it's just this sense of home. And it's this sense of always belonging to this small little school on a lake. And there's just a magic about Wells that I think all of us carry with us in some way, shape, or form, whether if that's the decal on your window or the shirt that you wear or the spirit in your heart. There's just something that Wells gives to you in that experience that I think we're all able to bring out into the world. You know, I can't say that there was one particular class or one particular person or professor that like influenced me greater than anyone else. I think, yet again, it's that community of support that really helps us to to be who we are and to really succeed outside school. But it's also that challenge, right? Val will know, like, the challenge and support. So there's a lot of challenges that we face at Wells too. Some of those classes are not easy. I had to write a lot of papers for my psychology classes. So that was challenging, but then that prepared me to go into grad school, and those assignments in grad school were then easy because I was really challenged with a lot of my Wells courses. And yet again, I had such a strong group of people around me to support me and help me. So I think just all of that has really, helped me in my trajectory in the world.
Okay, this will have to. Oh, sorry, Abby.
Oh no, go ahead, Marit.
I was going to say this has to be my last thought because I just saw that they started, and my boss is looking for me somewhere in the chat. I think you know what? We had a woman at Wells. She was in the Career Center. Her name was Nancy Karpinski, and I didn't particularly ever I thought I knew it all when I was 22 and 21, and I was like, I know everything. Like, I don't need to listen to this. But Nancy used to talk about like networking and how important it was. And my dad, was a big person about networking as well. And I was always like, whatever, that's fine. But I took an internship here in Onondaga County with a victim advocacy program in our district attorney's office, which was amazing. And I got to work on this like awesome murder trial, and I got to work with the family, and it was so cool. And the woman who ran that said to me, like, if you ever, want to go into social work, let me know, blah, blah. So when I came back here, and I applied for this job with our local domestic violence agency, the job was in her office. And when she got my resume, she was like, oh my God, I totally remember her. She was my intern and whatnot. And like, it was like this woman who I had met when I was, 19 years old, remembered me when I was 25. And then I was like, oh my God, it all makes sense now. And I didn't know everything. And being able to like make those Wells connections, and that Wells gave us those opportunities. Like, I was a history, social, I was supposed to be a social studies teacher. I love what you said, Zach. Like, I thought I wanted to be a high school teacher. Guess what? I didn't. But like, and I spent a lot of money trying to figure that out, by the way. But that these opportunities of networking through Wells as well, and like meeting people. I worked with a girl I went to college with at our domestic violence agency. I've come across Wells graduates in my job, and like, I also love that I'm so close to Aurora that I can go back when I need to, like, just have that little touch point for a minute to like regroup and recenter, and in hard moments. And I do that a lot when we have like, hard things going on at work or my personal life. I'll drive to Aurora and like go sit where my picture is, and like just regroup and get it together, and go back and be the person I need to be. But I think that there's something incredibly special about Wells. That there's a reason why all of us still love it so much and talk about it, and and that we still have this connection. So I think the best thing about Wells was just Wells itself.
Totally.
And now I'm jumping out because it's starting. But thank you. It was so nice meeting you all.
Catch you next time.
Yay.
Bye.
I was gonna quickly say to Zach, when you mentioned about the Wells people, I don't know if everybody else does this, but in my friend group, we often compare people we meet outside of Wells against the barometer of Wells. Like, this person's cool, they would have been a Wells person. And we literally say it about everybody that we meet. Like, oh, you'd love her, she would be a Wells woman. Or, oh, you'd love him, he would be a Wells person. It's all the time. It's like, don't worry, you're coming to my bachelorette party and you don't know these people. Don't worry, they're all Wells, like they're all Wells cool. It's fine.
Yes.
Does everybody do that, or is that just, okay, good. I'm glad it's not just me.
My friends are like, are they like Wells? Would they be fit in with Wells people? And
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad. That's awesome. For my time at Wells, I don't think I had anything similar to Marit. There wasn't like one thing that stuck out, but something that I wish I knew then was similar to what Marit was saying about, I don't have it figured out. I have no idea. And I really thought I did. I thought there was one path, one place I was supposed to go, one vision or version of success in my mind. And that was thrown immediately against the wall when I didn't get into grad school immediately after Wells. And I was devastated. And I was like, it's over for me. Like, if you don't get in now, you just don't get in. And that wasn't true. I ended up going back and getting my master's degree. And it wasn't so much about not getting in then, but having that realization that like failure is okay and it's going to lead you in a different place. And I would argue that I'm having like my own version of success that's very different than what I thought in my head at 20 success was. And so I would go back and tell myself, like, chill out, Abby, you're fine. Like, you're okay. You're gonna be just fine.
I still have those moments though, all the time of like, in my 30s, 35. Sorry, it took me a second. And
Hey, your birthday is recently, right?
Next week. Wait, 2 days. 2 days from now. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But it's everything. Well, it's not fair to say everything will always work out. But like there are a few irrevocable things that are going to happen, which are just going to completely devastate and destroy and throw completely off kilter without an ability to come back. And I did not understand that at all at Wells.
Right.
And I still don't fully understand it, but I try to remind myself of it often.
Yeah. It's so true. It's pervasive, right?
Yeah.
Like I had to move across the country for a job I didn't even know I was doing just because I didn't get into grad school because we were in the middle of a recession still, right? It's just those things that are just like, oh, path is completely altered and we're gonna just go with it. And you're right, it doesn't always come back or work out. I'm probably being too much of an optimist because you're right, it's totally different. I went a completely different path. It didn't go back to the same thing.
It didn't go badly either.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it didn't, yeah. We're all still here, but yeah.
I think that like Gen Z, these students now and these young alums now are really honest with one another about these struggles, health things, and then just the struggles that even my closest friends and I weren't so open with at 22. And so I think that's a really cool way that it has gone. And so something I try to do with students at Wells, and I know I'm the moderator, but I just, I think it's really great to just validate where they are, especially these last few years. It's been really hard for everyone. And also that it's okay if your path isn't a straight line that you thought it might be in your 20s, or just to prepare them and say, hey, you might notice it could be harder to make friends after college or that kind of thing. And just like, it's okay, it's gonna work itself out. But that was hard for me. And of course, later I learned it was hard for everyone, but I didn't know that in the moment because I was suffering alone.
Right. Oh, good call out. I mean, the suffering alone, right? Especially immediately after leaving Wells. I think that's real.
But now all the students I talk to are just so open about it. And I'm just like, okay, you're all gonna be all right.
Yeah. It's like I can't just go to lunch with my friends anymore, right? Like I can't just go to the dining hall. And so there's a reality of, I'm cooking my own food every day. Who thought that would be a struggle? But it is. But it's like the communicating your needs as opposed to just being there with everybody. That's a real struggle you have to learn after Wells. Maybe some people did it really well at Wells. I did not. I think Val, you were talking about boundaries earlier. I didn't have them. I was like,
I did it at Wells.
yeah, I'll take it all, whatever, and I'll never communicate my needs. And I had to learn that. I don't know. I'm still learning it, to Duncan's point. Who knows?
I think too, like, hopefully we have some students watching this who I think would be the students who probably need it, which is like, don't wait until you're burned out when you're a junior because you did every activity. Like, set some boundaries now, do the clubs that are important to you now, and you don't have to carry the weight of the college on your shoulders, it's okay.
And if you don't know what you want to do or be or whatever, that's okay. Just figure out what you like.
Yeah.
Spend some time with yourself.
Maybe to like complicate or challenge this idea of like networking that Marette shared, I would say like network, but if you're an introvert like me, like do it very strategically and find like your people and your mentors. So I'm gonna shout out to like Professor Renfro and Professor Olson, because my senior year I was like burnt out, trugging along trying to do my thesis and research and a lot of different things, but both of them were just like super supportive, like really great student advocates, and I think some of the things that were most beneficial to me in my like last couple of years of my Wells education was just like Professor Olson like identifying me as like a researcher and like putting me up, like putting my papers out to NCORE and things like that, NCORE, doing conferences and things, and Professor Renfro being like in the capstone like thesis class within the major. I think he was the advisor for my senior year, and he was really like, I see that you're really interested in education. Maybe think about these different types of like grad school tracks, because at the time I was very resistant to like the education field. My mom was a substitute teacher. I like grew up with a lot of teachers and educators in my life, and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. That's like not for me. I can't do the classroom. But then yeah, like especially Professor Renfro being like, there's other ways to like be an educator in the world. You don't necessarily have to be in a K-12 classroom. And so the reason why I'm at UW is because Professor Renfro like went to UW for graduate school, and he was like, just explore some of these options. And I was like, okay. So yeah, really shout out to like the student and faculty like ratio at Wells was really beneficial. Because like something I didn't realize when I was like 22 and like leaving Wells was just the fact that it's such a gift to have such one-on-one and like pretty deep connections with your faculty members, and having that mentorship and like intergenerational institutional knowledge like passed down to you in that way, and having like that network, even if it's like a small network, just having people like on your side and on your team from the Wells community is really important.
I love that, Val. I was going to say earlier when the question was about something that you, an important class you took at Wells, and I really took from, I had a psych class about generativity, and the class was really focused on older people, older adults, and what are you passing on to the next generation. But I've always really connected that to like teaching and with what you're all doing right now, which is volunteering your time to give back to our students, and how meaningful that is. It really is precious and special and really easy when you think about it that way. It's not costing any a big amount of money or anything. It's costing a lunch break, and you're here connecting and putting that out there to the world of, it's going to be okay. You know, happy to talk if you want to talk to me. And that's generativity. It's putting on what we love about Wells to the next generation. And I think that's really awesome. And I love that as a student too. Like it's really meaningful. It's always stuck with me, like any kind of mentoring or volunteering in the world, but obviously this is well specific too. So it's just like, that's one of the things we all got out of our experience there, was somebody spending that time to make it special for us.
Absolutely. And I often think of myself as like an applied anthropologist in education. So I'm like, how do I bring like cultural relativity and thinking about like different ways of being and knowing in the world to my students, and like how I like serve a student population from like an ethnographic and anthropological lens and framework. So shout out to Professor Olson for all of his great classes, and like just like instilling that within me.
That's such a good point. I do the same thing at work with like, I'm looking at resources and how to allocate them. Like I feel like a city planner, right? And it's like, oh, sociology, right? I'm taking all of these things that are out here and institutions that need resources to run. And I like look at it in that way, and I'm like bringing up people. I'm like, well, if we do it like this, it'll look like this, and we can use this theory instead. And people are like, what are you talking about? It's just skills and people. And I'm like, sure. But in my mind, it's a sociological experiment because I need it to do something. Yeah.
So let's see, I know we're gonna wrap up soon. I feel like this is one of those easy panels where I don't even have to ask the questions because our conversations naturally just connect. And I love that about Wells too, because it's such a Wells thing. Let's see, how about, do you have any, I would love any internship suggestions that might help students to careers in your field, or just what you did as an undergrad. I know sometimes that feels really overwhelming. Even with a career services department at Wells, it's a lot. So any advice about that would be awesome. They do still have to have a few internships. Let's talk about that.
One of the things that I did was find my own. I did not rely on Wells to make that connection happen for me. I went out, and the most intimidating question I got about that presentation was it political? Well, of course it was political, because I interned with the county clerk, who was part of the Republican Women of Hugo County. And I was trying to, being a political science major, make inroads into the county, do what I could. I eventually did hold public office, not in the county, but in the town of Locke. At 20, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the next great politician. Went to Albany, found out that was not the case. Those people are far too dishonest. Had my children, came back to Wells, started again to try and be a teacher, but politics is at the root of everything I do. I guess that's why I work for a state agency. I don't know. It's just who I am. And just go out and find your passion. My son did his is for numbers. He's working right now, turned it into a job this semester, but he did it over the summer, keeping the books for Trey Levin Winery. He loves it. I'm like, okay, numbers aren't my thing, but funny enough, that's what I do every day. My son and I have very similar, I guess, jobs at this point. I never thought in a million years I would be doing numbers, but again, that career path is not straight. Like Abby said, never did she think she would be doing this. My take on it is I'm very happy being a civil servant. I love working for the state of New York. New governor, we'll see how that goes. But I wouldn't trade my state service for anything. I feel like I'm, it sounds corny, but a contributing member of society by working for the state. And I'm proud to be a state employee. And most people are just like, oh, you're a state employee, you know, and that's not a big deal. Well, it's important to who I am and who I want to be, and being able to be a part of the union. And I'm interviewing for the employee assistance program so I can teach and give back, because that's what Wells gave me, giving back. Hopefully I'll be the employee assistance coordinator, program coordinator at the end of the week. So fingers crossed.
I was super low income, and so a lot of internship opportunities weren't really available to me. It was like, oh, look, you can go to the city, you can go to New York, you can go to Boston. And I was like, that's out of my wheelhouse. I grew up in a really tiny town in New Hampshire, and there weren't opportunities there for one, what I wanted to do, or two, things that I could even get transportation to. And so I actually went and interned on campus. I interned on campus at the Wells Book Art Center, and we did a ton of stuff there. We published a book by Bruce Bennett. We put on holiday seminars teaching people how to print and how to do bookbinding. And so if you don't have the facilities or the resources at your disposal, look on campus. There's work to be done everywhere. Go nuts. That's a good place to look for an internship.
I love that. Thank you for bringing it up, and make sure they'll help with career services. But again, any student seeing this, there are lots more internships available on campus now than when I was there. And I agree wholeheartedly. We also have a grant that has brought some folks onto campus called TRIO, and really helping a lot of those students that you're talking about, Abigail, like just first generation students, for example. I was also first gen, and it can feel really overwhelming. And again, any students, that's another spot where alums are happy to chat with you and just kind of connect, because it can be really overwhelming. And even just knowing like how to network, what does that even mean? Or like Val was saying, if you're a little bit more introverted, you don't have to be out like wearing a suit and shaking hands to network successfully. So that is one form, but I've gotten all of my jobs through informal networking, just being myself. I'm very extroverted in work, but at home I'm very introverted, and it still is anxiety producing to go out and network. But really just be yourself, and occasionally be brave and put yourself out there, and that really makes a difference, because you never know who knows somebody or who can give you advice or help support you.
Yeah, and to echo like what Betty shared, I think also just like play around with it. Like you can really invent your own internship with Wells, and so like I would really want to encourage students to like be inventive and creative. And I was also claim that I'm like a, I don't know, a half gen, kind of a first gen. My mom went to college in the Philippines, so she does have a degree, but like US higher ed was completely new to me and I didn't have support to like navigate it. So like when I went to Wells, and there were, I'm also like originally from Texas. And so there wasn't a lot of internships available for like like East Coast or New York State students and residents. So I was like, really had to figure out what my internships would be. And I interned at the USS Lexington, which is an aircraft carrier outside of my hometown of Corpus Christi, Texas, with the curatorial staff, because I was like, this is anthropology-esque. Like, let me learn about military history and learn how to archive things, because there was a brief moment in my Wells career where I was like, I think I just want to work in museums. That seems fun. And Professor Olson, like, really does have a lot of classes around museology and like thinking about like display and how we can do that critically. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll do museum work. And then did a lot of cold calling and was like at my hometown, because in the summer I had to go back home to Texas, and was just like, what museums will take me? What are they looking for? And the USS Lexington was like, yeah, we could use an intern. We've never done this before, but like we only have volunteer staff, so like we can sign off on some timesheets and things. And then I was a curatorial intern and learned how to like do accessioning and like archiving of different like materials and stuff. And that was like a really informative internship, just to like see a little bit of that world. And also it helped me like realize that maybe I didn't want to do museum stuff and be like in the stacks doing that type of work. But yeah, just be really inventive with it. And there's like a lot of flexibility at Wells to like, what is the course code? It's like $4.99 or $3.99.
Yeah, it's like independent studies, right?
Independent study. I also was like a registrar's office assistant, so I kind of like knew a little bit of like the handbook when I entered into Wells. So yeah, really like work with a faculty member, get your independent studies so you can get your academic credit, and then tie that in with your internship. Yeah, so the experience is very holistic, but also you're getting like some form of compensation or academic credit for the labor that you're putting in. Highly recommend that. And also just like play around with it and do what experiences you're interested in, get a sense for the field that you might want to like engage in, or also utilize that to like kind of check off your list, like maybe that's not where I want to be in the future. But that's really what the internships are for, like that experiential learning opportunity.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just think it's really important what you said. Just like, it never hurts to ask. It never hurts to just send an email or make a phone call to someone that you're interested in working. But also, like Val said, if you're already doing something that could be a internship, work smarter and not harder. Transform that into something that could potentially be your experiential learning experience. So yeah, that's my.
Yes, I feel like we could keep talking. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time. Does anyone have any last thoughts so we can make sure to keep you on track for your day?
I have one thing I just want to say about, particularly if you're interested in marketing or advertising, never ever take an unpaid internship. It is exploitative. It is everywhere, and just never do it. Don't do unpaid work. Contact me. I'll put you in touch with anyone who will pay for an internship, but never take an unpaid internship. And we know your audience. I mean, everyone that I work with makes a lot of money, so it's not a state like group that like doesn't have the budget to pay for this. But like, if you're doing like a private industry internship, never do it for free.
Amen. Especially for
Yes.
school, right? You're paying to go to school, so you shouldn't have to pay to do an internship. Get paid.
Exposure does not pay the bills.
Exactly.
Yes. It's
Good point,
there's
Duncan,
one thing
for
with
sure.
volunteering, like you're all volunteering your time right now. Thank you. But yeah, I totally, I love like, let's get paid. I like helping find resources for that. I'm always happy to be like, here's an email of ways to negotiate your pay and things like that. I love that.
Yeah,
Thank
I was
you
also
for
about to
saying
say, always advocate for yourself too. I wish someone taught me that while I was in school or in grad school, but it's so important to advocate for your worth and to know what you deserve. Always getting paid is the first step, but beyond that, what roles that you're going to take on, what responsibilities you're going to take on, and advocating for yourself throughout that process. Because I think Wells taught us all to think critically and speak our minds, and that you're able to do that in the real world as well. in your jobs, and don't be afraid to say that.
I will say Wells taught us also to get shit done, which is a problem if you're trying to advocate for yourself, because you're just like, oh, I can just do it. I can take on
just
that
do
role.
it.
But
Oh
no,
my gosh,
because
I
someone
know.
else would get paid to do that role and they're asking you to do it. So
That's where the
Yeah.
boundary work comes in.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Always like screaming in
We're
my
all
office,
works in
like,
progress.
Take your lunch break. You're
Yeah.
not getting paid for your lunch break. They take it out. Go eat
Yeah.
lunch. Don't burn
It's a
yourself
full
out.
circle.
Yes, I love, okay,
And
I just
state
said in the
employees are
comments, I'm
good
like, I
at-
smell another panel. We could totally have a negotiation and boundary setting
Yeah.
panel. That would be so helpful. I mean, how many years did we all waste in our 20s being like, I'll just work during all of my lunches and vacations. And for what?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Anybody watching this, if you email me at alumoffice@wells.edu, or if you know our porter at wells.edu, I can connect you with our wonderful alums who are here. And I would love to do this again. We can talk to Giovanna about it. And I would love to have another panel or in-person conversation. I think it's so valuable, and I feel like we could talk all day. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We're having a casual networking tonight at 7. If anyone's able to make it, we'll be there. And also please reach out to me anytime if I can ever help you, or if you ever want to connect with students or faculty members. I would love to make those connections. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Rachel.
you.
Yes, I appreciate it. Have a great
What a
day,
blast.
everyone.
Have a good one.
Yes.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
See y'all.